Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are doing a number 2, and we're going to do a number 3 in January with the Supply Corps, Navy Supply Corps. We're so happy to have Captain Jay Turner with us and Commander Leanne Riley. As you all have probably figured out, when you were looking at the YouTube virtual brown bag that we did on the November the 15th, sometimes we had some internet issues and some freezing going on. So that's all because of the fact that the government is very secure and we were using our own personal internet and it didn't always give us the best reception. So today we are happy that Captain Turner and Commander Riley are going to go over some of the very important questions that you all received or that you gave us on November the 15th. As you know, my name is Captain Mary McAdams. I am the Career Development Chair for NNOA. And so we're going to get right into this. And so as you listen, just get you something to drink or something to eat, because we're still very much wanting you to be relaxed, take notes, and pay attention. So Captain Turner, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Captain McAdams, thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with the questions. And again, the intent here is to give a better audio and more clear answers to the questions that the constituents in the community have. So the very first one under detailing, has there been any discussion on having lieutenant commanders conduct their O4 operational tours after the utilization tour postgraduate school? That would allow O4s to use their skills right away after grad school. So we have had discussions. The reason that it is difficult to fit that way is because of the requirements and demands and the priorities that we have. Operational tours at all pay grades where we have operational billets are our priority, along with nominative billets and overseas billets. Because of the inventory constraints that we have had and are experiencing, right now we are having to leverage every officer that we can find to these tours. Specifically, we have 82 operational billets at the O4 level, and there's usually about 80 or so folks in a 2-year cycle that are available. What we have been trying to do is work with people on staying in the Navy and working out specific scenarios where people are not able to serve in operational tours or overseas, and that will give us a level of flexibility. We are seeing that grow, very small numbers, but it's growing. And so we are trying to work with the community to give some flexibility on the utilization tour time. Next question was, most of the billets aren't currently green, and the detailers are telling lieutenant commanders we're either going to sea or overseas. And so that's not much of an open conversation. So again, that goes back to the very first question. Most of the billets that are not green, or the white billets, are because the number of people that we have available to detail against the number of billets and then the prioritization leads us to operational tours and overseas tours. Because of our focus and what we do with warfighting readiness, and Navy mission, many of those critical supply chain billets are in operational locations or they are overseas. So that puts a level of constraint on how we are detailing. Should a constituent come and say, hey, I have a certain variable in my life. I have an EFM, I have a COLO requirement. We do work with officers to try and get folks into CONUS billets, and we have been able to do that. But again, the reason that you're seeing this is because the constrained inventory that we have against the priorities that we have to fill, we have to fill those billets first, and then as we can, we will fill those CONUS billets. The next section will be recruiting and retention, and the first question is with Commander Riley.
Right, so the first question we had related to kind of recruiting and retention themed questions here was, what exactly are you doing to combat the atrocious 30% attrition rate in the lieutenant ranks? So for those of you who don't know, right, our lieutenants leave us before 8 years of commissioned service roughly at 27 to 30%. That's actually not new. So historically, that has been our average for quite a while. We know, and we've all experienced it, that the first 8 to 10 years of our career is heavily operational, right? 2C tours prior to screening for O4. And with that, arduous tours comes fatigue. Some folks, they serve out their initial obligations, and it's time to go. And so 27 to 30% is actually historically an average. So while that number seems high, and it is much higher than we would desire, it's not new, and it's actually not representing a change. The challenge we have with that number today is that as we've seen our inventory decline some and more demand for supply corps officers grow, losing officers at any rate of 30% is going to have an impact on us. And so addressing that really is going to mean rethinking some of the way that we manage our officers, right? And we talk specifically about retaining those officers, right? Giving them, incentive to want to stay in beyond the lieutenant pay grade. Now, what is that going to look like in the future? I think we're still working through that. I think, beyond just the operational tour, right? Really understanding what's motivating our officers to stay and leave across all pay grades is on the top of the list here down in Millington. We want our officers to have that job satisfaction. We understand the impacts of some of the things that Captain Turner just talked about with detailing, prioritizing how they're filling those billets and the impacts that has on you and the decisions that you're making. We understand all of those things shape your behaviors, your decisions to stay, your decisions to go. And so if we want to take a 30% loss of lieutenants and reverse that and maybe take it down to 25, take it down to 20, that may mean that we have to also rethink kind of holistically how we're managing the careers of our supply officers. And that's big change, right? So, our career path has been fundamentally the same for decades. And so when you're talking change that big, it's not some decision we're going to be able to make today, and you're going to see that big appreciable change. So we are working on it. We do want that number to go down in the environment where we're short on lieutenants, where officers are leaving a little earlier than we would desire. Obviously, 30% is something that is really no longer sustainable for our community. But how we're going to change that is really going to be through, I think, taking a progressive look at kind of really multiple areas. It's just not as simple as give me a bonus or changing incentives for postgraduate school, right? Those carrots are nice, but do they really lead to the effective change that we need? There's some question about that. So we are thinking about it here. We do want to reduce 30%. We're not necessarily concerned about 30% because that's what we've had historically. But do we want to see that reversed? Yes, right. And we need some feedback here to learn and understand beyond just high op tempo. What are those things that are keeping folks from seeing themselves as a lieutenant commander beyond?
Okay, the next question. Supply Corps officers seem to be out of touch with junior officers. What recruiting plans are you planning to improve the health of the Supply Corps? Specifically, what are you doing to target via HBCUs to increase the minority officers? So it's a great question and very timely. Recently, the Chief of Supply Corps gave a Navy Leader Development Framework, or NLDF, brief to the VCNO and the CNO. And there is a section in that brief that discusses minorities, specifically ethnic minorities by race and by gender. And in the analysis that was done for this current year, the Supply Corps is on pace and in some ethnicities ahead of pace with the Navy and our civilian constituents. So that's to say that we are on target by numbers. However, in terms of how that breaks down in some of our tough visible tours and forward progression, there are areas where we lag, specifically with women, and there are going to be efforts to take some studies that were done at NPS and improve on that. For ethnic minorities through the HBCUs, there isn't anything planned right now, but we do have a focus as a community on continuing to not just bring in minorities, but mentor and guide through a career path so that opportunities are available. Officers can have the experience they want and are competitive for the various administrative boards and selection boards that we have within our community. Second question is, apart from the personal desire of each individual, what is the real reason for so many promising senior supply corps officers submitting "Don't Pick Me" letters and passing on 05 milestone and major command? So I've had some conversations with some 05s through the team and 06s at my desk. And it really does come down to individuals looking at balance and making a choice. For those of you who do attend the road shows, you'll see one of my slides will have a Venn diagram that's broken down by personal desires, professional development, and needs of the Navy. And as I explained, needs of the Navy becomes a bigger and bigger part of the calculus as you get more senior. And as I've talked with constituents, some of them will say, yes, my goal was 3 years as a captain and then to retire. Some people will say, I've wanted more, I've wanted major command, I've wanted to milestone, but when I look at the balancing act that I have to do in order to achieve those things or sustain those tours, I'm taking a little bit more away from my family than I really want to. So it isn't a frustration with the Navy or the process, it's a decision and a balancing act that an individual is looking at. So the takeaway that we have is that people aren't necessarily frustrated with the process. They are simply taking the time to make the best choice for them and for their families. The next question, why are so many 06s in the Supply Corps punching at high 3? What's going on with our community? Is it a sign to start to put an exit plan in place? So we have taken a look at the numbers and take over several years, but I'll focus on this current cycle. So we have 32 officers who have placed requests for retirement. Of those 32, 16 are statutory, which means half of the individuals who will retire this year are staying to 30 years. Of the remaining, about half of what's remaining are folks who are going to high 3, which means less than 10% of the Supply Corps captain inventory is staying simply for high 3. Looking back over the numbers historically, that's about where we have been and where things track. So there isn't necessarily a level of increase with the Supply Corps, people simply staying to 3 years. In fact, I'd say we have a pretty good track of keeping people to the max extent possible for service. The next area of topics is the surveys. There was one question, and that question is, the CNO pushes get real, get better. Based on that, when is the Supply Corps going to get real and release the community survey we took 2 years ago? What are we hiding? So first, there isn't anything that's being hidden. When we came on board back in 21, we took the time to analyze the data. The data consisted of 692 different comments. We took those comments, we broke them down into different areas and really boiled it down to several things. The community has concerns with networking. They have concerns with opportunity, and the community has concerns with the third one. Mentorship. And as we took a look at that, we briefed the Chief of Supply Corps. Over time, he started to really digest and absorb and even brief that during his NLDF brief. Some efforts that we are doing in order to overcome the concerns. One, reinstituting the Junior Officer Training Symposium, or JOTS. And the purpose of that is to really reconnect the community, especially after the period of COVID, where we became more disparate and our communication lifelines really ebbed. Those forums will introduce junior officers to senior officers for mentorship, will provide an avenue to look at different opportunities and career paths within the Navy Supply Corps. We're also linking the information into some higher level get real, get better discussions, and we will see where we can plug in to make some changes. The Chief of Supply Corps and OP and the OCM take the comments very, very seriously, and we're
And I'd add, sir, too, that, right, that Kevin Turner mentioned here, right, in January, we're going to step out and hit the roadshow season, right, and have opportunity to go face to face with Kevin Turner and his team and the OCN team here. And for those of you that physically can't make it to it, we've got virtual options later in the year as well. And so a lot of the information that's going to get put out in the roadshow, right, is crafted from the concerns that we're learning from those surveys. And so while the raw data may not be made available for the surveys, it is 100% shaping the analysis that's going on down here, the conversation amongst leadership, both in and out of Millington for the Supply Corps. And then also, it has shaped the way that we're formulating the discussion that we want to have with you, because we are learning from the information that was provided in that survey. And so, I 100% agree with Captain Turner, right? There's no desire to hide any of the information. In fact, what we want to do is directly address the concerns that you gave to our community through that survey, but we're doing it in a tailored way that is both constructive and is really improving and changing the way that we address problems and prioritize problems down here in Millington. So, please continue to share that information and be transparent with us. We owe you the same response back, and please come out to those road shows or dial into the virtual option here or the follow-on brown bag later in this year when we do a live session, because it's those topics, those themes, and those levels of feedback that are really forming the discussions that Captain Turner and I want to have with you.
Next section, mentorship and discussions for Commander Wright.
So a question came in specifically, right, asking me, what have you done to be noticed in your previous commands? And I think that this question was shaped from a female perspective, right? As a female leader, an officer who's made commander, and what have I done as a female officer to sort of make it to where I am, at least within my career? And so my response is going to be somewhat about being a female leader, but most of it's going to be generalized for everybody. So, as far as being a female officer and somebody who's achieved the rank of commander, I would say, my approach to handling that as a gender minority in the military has really not been to make that part of my identity as a naval officer, right, and as a professional. And so, I approach, my business and my career as in, I'm here to be a leader. I'm here to be a logistician. I just happen to be a female. And I think back to the time, right, serving on board submarines, being part of the integration of women on board submarines. And as I worked with my command triad, one of the early questions to that process was, right, how do we handle having women on board submarines? And my response and with my command triad was, you treat us like naval officers, you treat us like submariners, because that's who we are, right? We happen to be women, but when we start segregating ourselves as a minority, then we're not part of the team. We're separate from the culture that we're trying to build here. And so bring us in and treat us to the same standard as everybody else. And that's been my approach to being a female officer. And at least it has served me well in my opinion. So, and helped me through challenges that I've had. Now, beyond that, right, being successful as a professional naval officer, I would encourage everybody, men and women, to be students of your career. I think that's really, to me, more important than, overcoming maybe a barrier of being, a female minority, right? Is that be a student of the career that you want to have. So, and I think that goes across all levels. Personally, I think you have to have a vision and look very inwardly on, why are you here, right? Not only the reason why you applied for commissioning, and however that came about for you to become a Supply Corps officer, but also the reason why you wanted to be a leader, why you wanted to be the United States Navy, right? Where do you want to go personally with your professional career? What are those things that you value and that motivate you? and continue to kind of circle back on that all the time, right? Continue to sort of provide yourself that rudder check about why you're here. Are you achieving those things that give you fulfillment, right? And where is that alignment within the Supply Corps and within the United States Navy? I would argue that one of the benefits of the Supply Corps is the versatility we have in our careers. We cover so many weapon systems, and we're all over the globe, right? There is, and I know that there's conversations about the flexibility and detailing and things. So, but outside of that, right, even with all of that, there is so much diversity in this career that we have that with a little bit of time placed into working your own personal vision and understanding what the Supply Corps can offer you at each step along that career, being a student of that process, knowing a career map, both in short and long term, I think it will help you find a place within the community, find your purpose and meaning with what you want to do today, what you want to do in a couple of years, and where you might end up along the way. Right. I think too, sometimes that being a student of our careers and this community, specifically the Navy and what we expect of naval officers, it helps level set expectations, right? If you're aware of what the Navy is asking of the Supply Corps, if you're aware of what the Supply Corps is asking of you as an individual, asking of your teams, maybe asking of your boss, when you start to study and really dive into those things, you start to be able to manage the expectations for yourself and then project that out into the people that you're leading a little bit better, right? And again, it's finding comfort into your place into this whole ownership. And so when I say student of your career, I mean it for you. I mean it for understanding what your boss is valuing, understanding what pressures your boss has on their shoulders. So how can you help within that process? Understanding the challenges of the sailors and the civilians that you may be leading, right? If you're a student of that relationship and interaction, right? Now you can be more adaptable. I think knowing yourself is important too, right? Knowing who you are as a leader, studying your own personal strengths and weaknesses, and finding a way to leverage those so that you are benefiting and aligning to your command, the Supply Corps, the Navy mission. The last thing I would say too is, surround yourself with a team and a tribe of good people, right? So none of us are going to do this job alone. One of the best parts of the Supply Corps to me are the people within this community, right? It's the reason why I never left. It's the reason why I'm happy to stay. It's the reason why I love this job specifically, is the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Supply Corps officers. And I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today, and I wouldn't necessarily see the vision that I have in the future if I didn't have a lot of really good people around me, a lot of really good close friends who I can talk to when I'm angry, who I can laugh about silly things when those happen. Those are the people that keep me grounded in who I am and call me out on my BS. You need that to feel, I think, humbled and to feel a place within this. The mentoring portion of this as well, right? Having those trusted mentors and folks that you can, again, bounce ideas off of, get a reality check, have them educate you, again, back to studying your career and yourself. It all sort of goes back into that feedback loop. But having those relationships, having some of those healthy practices, and that working on your vision for yourself, it all goes together to, I think, mature yourself into what potentially could be a very successful and long career. And I hope for everybody, it is a long career, and we recognize it's not for everybody, but hopefully you make those decisions with, a lot of good information at hands. And you're always welcome to call me, right? Happy to talk to anybody. As I said, I like the Supply Corps. I love Supply Corps officers. But those are some of the things that have helped me throughout the years, helped me get to where I am today. Captain Turner, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add as far as, being successful in this career, but that's sort of my thoughts.
The one thing I would add is really understanding how to put everything together and recognizing that as a Supply Corps officer, you have a unique opportunity in that you have the opportunity to touch multiple warfare domains, multiple aspects of what we do to be a part of the solution set. So many of us will take the time and say, hey, I really want to do BFM. I really want to do contracting. I'm really interested in OR. But the purpose and the design and the vision is to make you an end-to-end supply chain integrator. So what does that mean? So as an example, maybe you work in the Pentagon and you're doing spares. Well, it's much more than just ILS. You have to understand working capital fund and appropriated dollars and the POM process and how that works. Then you have to tie that into buy repair plans for contracting. Then you have to tie that into understanding models, how they work. Is it a demand-based model? Is it a readiness-based model? Is it a maritime system? Is it an aviation system? Are you working with NAVC? Are you working with NAVAIR? Which resource sponsors are you working with and what are their priorities? And as you're able to look at all of these things and put it together, then when you're talking to senior leaders and we have to make decisions in trade space, you're able to say, well, if we don't support this spares process, then ultimately we can't meet this mission because we won't have this capability. And you will be surprised at how many people will start to look at you and recognize the value in your expertise and your ability to take all of those areas, but create a whole picture. And once you're able to do that, you will start to really grow. You'll grow in your relationships. You'll grow in your ability to communicate. You'll grow in your ability to understand up and down and laterally with the echelons, with other services as well. So I would offer that taking the time as you're studying yourself and studying what we do, learn how to take all of our disciplines and weave them into one picture, because ultimately the goal when you're a commander or captain is to be an end-to-end supply chain integrator. And again, once you're able to do that, you're really making some strides for the supply corps and for the Navy. Okay, so the next question is sort of a wrap-up question. The question is, are we having issues keeping supply corps officers as senior officers? What would you say to JOs and mid-grade officers as reasons to stay? Well, Commander Riley really touched on some really good points. Some other things that I would tell people is the opportunity to get around the globe and really understand how our global community works, not just within the military or the Navy, but how people work, what people value, and how those value streams change. The opportunity to expose your family to different cultures. People who've read my bio know that I have been in the Pacific Theater, I've been in Europe, I've been in Central Theater, and when I've had the opportunity to take my family to these places, we were able to not just read about things, but go and experience things that you might learn in school, things you might pick up in your own self-learning efforts. And being able to expose my family to those things has been one of the best things that we have been able to do. So when my children recognize, hey, we're not moving from Prince William to Fairfax County for a game, we're going from Italy to Holland, and we get the time to go look at things, or hey, we were able to go to Milan and we were able to see the first open market in Europe. Those things were great. Or being able to send my family off to Bali so that my wife and my daughters could enjoy something, that was great. The opportunity to learn different languages has been great. Professionally, the reason to stay in, I talked about tying together the different core competencies we have, but then having the ability to tie together all of the different theaters of warfare with those domains and understanding where the priorities are, why the priorities are there, and then being able to inject as a naval officer and a leader solution sets to support from a logistics or supply chain effort. I think that those are some good reasons that people should want to stay in. The value of the friendships that you gain. One of the areas that I served, Bahrain, many of the folks that I served with 15 years ago, we're still very close. So those bonds that you create and also those contacts that you have. So if there's something that you're struggling with or you want to understand, you'll be amazed at the number of people you can reach out to as touch points who are in and out of the Navy that can help you in your development and your growth and your enjoyment of the supply corps.
Yeah, and I would add to that, right? The mission that we have as a supply corps is incredibly meaningful, right? I think that if you're a student of history, you see the importance of logistics and supply chains when it comes to, war. And that's who we are. I mean, that is our job. That is the identity of our Corps. And so, we tend to be underappreciated when things are going well. And I think that we're all very knowledgeable on what happens when the supply system, something breaks, something's not as expected and desired, and the heat that we get for that. And so, but when you look at that just really emphasizes the importance of the role that we play as leaders and managers of that end-to-end supply chain. And so, we have the ability, starting from day one out of the BQC, all the way till the time that we sort of punch out, to really make noticeable change in our careers at various levels, various places. And so all the things that Captain Turner said, and just know that, there's always value. One of the reasons why our community today is under a little bit of pressure when it comes to, hitting all of the demand for supply corps officers is because there's a huge demand for supply corps officers right now, right? Navy leadership wants supply corps officers. They want professional naval logisticians, and we just don't have enough of them, right? We need more. And so, but that's a compliment to our community and the quality of work that we do as professional logisticians. So, you're needed, your skills are needed, right? And we need you to stay because the Navy's asking for us and asking for us to be here because your place is firmly entrenched in the core of this Navy, right? And you can see that in our ability to, affect, the deck seamen all the way up to the 4-star admirals, right? We really have a very valuable mission. So,
Okay, the last question, and this is probably the most important message that Commander Riley and I can provide. The comment is, I've been given a lot of questions to supply corps officers to ask because they're too worried about asking them due to retribution. I want to make sure that people understand that there isn't any retribution when you ask questions. The reason that we are here and the reason that we are looking for avenues to address your concerns, to get out as much information as we can, and to take on some of the frustration is because it is so important. Our job is simply more than matching bodies to billets. Our job is to make sure that we create a culture and a community that knows their value, knows their worth, and knows that they're supported. And that if there are challenges to that we're giving you explanation. Again, you come to the roadshow, we have made some adjustments to the roadshow to give a deeper understanding to the why. Why are we here? And then how has it affected the way that we do business in the detailing and what we're looking for, not just within the policies and within the Witten building here in Millington, but what we can work out with the community. I can't stress enough that we need your input, right? We are a global community. We're a community of over 2,200 people, and we will come up with better solutions and we will get the way ahead in a better manner if we get your inputs. So I want to really stress that we are not going to be frustrated or offended by questions that are asked that are focused on us getting better as a community. We want that, we need that, we encourage that, and that's why we have been working with the NNOA to come back and work with the organization and answer more questions, because we understand the value in that, and in value not just for the community, but for all the individuals and our families that make up the supply corps.
Jay and Leanne, I think I got feedback going on. We are so proud to have you all come back and be transparent and share with NNOA and your community and the Navy and the Sea Services, because we are listened to by the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, and the Navy. You all just energize me. I know that there are other organizations and corporations, and they are not as transparent as we are in the Navy, and the Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Army, and Air Force. So I love you all for taking the time And I just want to point out to our audience the nice background that Jay and Leanne have. So they wanted to make sure that we did not have any internet issues. So they were nice enough to go out and find a place so that we could have personal internet and make sure that it worked. So I thank you for your hostess who allowed you to be there. I thank you for your time. It is wonderful that the Supply Corps and all Navy communities are reaching out and making sure that our JOs understand what they can do and how they can improve and lead their sailors in the Navy. And Leanne, I just want to do like the preachers do and say, stomp, stomp on, be a student of your career. That is a great comment. Be a student of your career. I remember when I first came in and I didn't know anything about the Navy. And that's one of the reasons I do what I do in mentoring, is because people come in and they think the military is one thing, or they think the Navy is another thing. And then they find out, oh my God, this is not exactly what I thought, or it's more than what I thought, but I need help. And you all are there to help. So can I ask you to give out a work telephone number in case they want to call you?
Sure, absolutely. So I know they are published in the OP Monthly. Plug for making sure you're reading that, right? Your leadership should be passing that out. We also have websites on My Navy HR. I swear we didn't rehearse that, but 901-874-3189 is the OCM line.
And my line is 901-874-4600.
Thank you all so much. And this concludes our part 2. Stay tuned for Jay and Leanne to come back in the new year and provide us with more Supply Corps, Navy Supply Corps information. Thank you. And we're signing off